Welcome back, creators and wannabes, to another episode of The Business of Art, the podcast that tries to demystify art for businessmen and business for artists, but honestly, pretty much only does the latter. I'm your host, Russell Nolte, and today we've got Bob Salley on the program. Now, Bob does a comic book called Salvagers, and he is pretty much universally beloved in the indie comic scene. So we brought him on to talk about how to build a single property. I have a lot of experience building multiple properties and often simultaneously, but I wanted to talk to him because he's very strong at building a single brand. His brand is Salvagers. That is the thing that he has focused on for the past 2 years, and honestly, since about 2003. But seriously, since 2013, and I want to talk to him about characters, how to build those characters, how to build that brand, how to go to Kickstarter and do that well again and again and again and again and again. So we talk a lot about the art part of it, and then we talk about the business. And here's the thing with Bob. Bob is running a new Kickstarter for issue 5 of Salvagers right now, this minute, while we talk. In fact, pause this podcast, go to Kickstarter, and find his book. It's okay. I'll wait. This is all recorded. Are you back? Okay. Awesome. I hope you backed the project because it is fantastic. Now, if you like what we're talking about today, I'm going to give you a couple of links. The first one is KickstarterUniversity.com. That is my consulting business where we show you how to run Kickstarter projects and launch your business, launch your product, and launch your career. Please sign up on the website and you will get access to tons of free content, free webinars, other information. We also have mini webinars, courses, long form courses as well that you can take. Second, we are also running a Kickstarter right now for our novel, My Father Didn't Kill Himself. My Father Didn't Kill Himself is about a girl whose father commits suicide, and she's so racked with guilt, grief, and loss that she sets out to prove that her father's death is actually a murder against all police evidence. Again, stop the podcast for a second. Go over, check it out. Even if you don't back, which I hope you will, you can look at exactly how we run a Kickstarter campaign. You can look at our rewards, how we use images, how we break up section headlines. Even though everything that we do is just words, we have a lot of great images and a lot of great section headlines. And you can see, hopefully, that we are successful in what we're doing. Now, this is something very new for us because we've never done a novel before. We're known as a comic book company. So this is kind of an experiment. We at The Business of Art are also running a mini season during the Kickstarter to tell you exactly what we're doing week by week. So we've already done a couple of episodes and we'll continue doing that until the Kickstarter ends at the end of February. Third, go to Wannabe Press and get some free webcomics if you like comics. I mean, we do 14 webcomics throughout the week, and then we wrap them all up on Wednesday and give them all to you. That being said, this is Bob. Hopefully you go to his Kickstarter. Again, if you haven't, go to Kickstarter, search for The Salvagers and My Father Didn't Kill Himself. Give us some love and enjoy the episode. Bye, guys. Welcome back, creators and wannabes, and welcome to another episode of The Business of Art, the podcast that tries to demystify art for businessmen and business for artists, but really only does the latter. Today, I have Bob Salley, who does an amazing comic book called The Salvagers. How you doing, Bob?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me on.
So let's start right now. Tell me what you are passionate about, Bob.
I'm passionate about writing, and I'm passionate about telling some sci-fi stories right now. I love creating new characters, and I didn't know it until maybe 2 years ago, but I really like entertaining, and I think that as these books have gone out and I've gotten the positive feedback that I have from people reading it and seeing that how much they enjoy it, you really start to feel like, entertaining people is a trip, and I try to work as hard as I can to just keep raising the bar so people are loving this stuff and that they kind of lose themselves in that world that you're building.
I love that thought. I will say that when I started writing, I was writing for me, and now I feel like I'm writing for the audience, and when they bring back all the love and affection that they bring for my stuff, it just makes me want to fuel and be better for them. Do you get that same feeling?
Oh, absolutely. It's every episode that we did or every issue that we put out. I would go over it and I would try to have as many people that I respect as writers and editors just take a look at it, because I really wanted to make sure that it was better than the last one, and I really hope that I did do that. And then, the ones that I have coming out, I'm doing the same thing. Like, what I want to raise the bar, like, what's, bigger, badder threats, cooler villains, and, get deeper into the characters so more about them, and just keep, peeling that onion back so you can get deeper into the characters and into the series. And again, when somebody reads it and they tell you that, for that, 15 minutes that they were reading your comic, that they just lost themselves in the universe, that's the best feeling ever.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So how did you get started doing comics? Were you previously doing prose, or tell me a little bit about your origin story?
Well, I mean, I always, ever since I was a kid, I loved comic books, and I wanted to draw comics, but I was a horrible artist, so that was out the window. I went to college. I still wanted to be a storyteller, and I took creative writing, which, you think back now, like anybody going to college, you're like, whatever you do not take creative writing as your major. You just, when you come out, you just have no idea what to do with it. But, you get a sales job and, you start sucking your life away. So you see, you're like, I need to get back into writing, and I need to do this because it's in my core to be a writer. So I was writing some short stories. I had published one, for an anthology, and I did some poetry, just anything, just to be creative. Like, I needed that creativity to flow. And then one time, like, I couldn't write anything. I hit such writer's block, and we're talking like maybe a year that I didn't write anything, and it really affected me. And when you sit there and you think to yourself, like, the dream of being a writer might be out the window, and it's just might be something that I'll never do. It stings, like you think like, wow, like I'm gonna give up on this. So I've thought about this crew that just goes out and cleans up space. I'm watching Star Wars, and the Death Star blows up, and I'm thinking, like, who's going to go out and clean that up? And you think about every sci-fi, story that you ever see. Like, there's, things blowing up left and right. So there's got to be somebody that goes out there and cleans it up. And my style was never like the heroes or, the outlaws, or, it was just real people. I wanted to get to the core of what, like, real people are, and that, we can relate to, even though they're out there cleaning up space. As we get deeper into these characters, you can, whether it's an alien or not, or a human, like, you see, like, like, hey, that character has problems just like I do, or has problems like somebody I know has, and you can start to relate with that character. And then you have to, be creative to think, like, well, how would they act? Like, of course, an outlaw in space is out there trying to steal, and he makes his choices because of that. And it's very easy to put them in a situation like that, but to have these people that are just out there trying to make their way in the galaxy, and to, that they have a job, and it's a dangerous job, but they have a job, and they might not want to get into anything, too dangerous, but why do they? What is it that makes them do this? And that was the challenge that I had, was to take these ordinary people and to give them purpose to, get into something so dangerous. And then what are they going to do from there? And as the story goes on, again, like, we've only scratched the surface for these characters. So as the story goes on, you see more about their history, and the choices that they make will make sense because of where they came from and where they want to go.
That sounds awesome. And when you started coming up with this idea, you obviously had the log line or the bit of an idea, did you start with the characters first before you came up with the storyline, or how did that work?
Well, I kind of came up with like the job first. Like here's the job of cleaning up space. There's a company called Harrier Salvage. They are the leader in intergalactic salvage and rescue, and then I started coming up with the main characters. And you have I had the captain is kind of, he's got his demons. He's kind of fallen from grace from Federation naval commander, and you, as the story goes on, you kind of get more and more about his history. I wanted to have a pilot who didn't really the characters themselves. None of them really want to do it. Maybe one does, but this isn't a glamorous job. And the pilot, when I had this, I wanted something unique about her, and I thought, okay, well, this girl, she's an amazing pilot. So why is she, if she's such an amazing pilot, why is she a salvager? Well, she was a pilot on a gun running ship that got busted, and she went to jail. And now this is, she's out of jail, and this is part of her work release. She's on parole, and this is her work release, is to be a salvage pilot. So, you get the sense as the story goes on that she's this is holding me back, and I tiptoe on the line of good and bad. And then Tyre's the big guy. He comes from a race that tried to commit genocide to another alien race, and they've kind of that species, that alien race, has just kind of gone nomadic in the galaxy, and few have stayed in civilization, but they had to register, and they're just really looked down upon and feared. And he just kind of wants to. He's the one that doesn't mind being the salvager, because he doesn't like staying. He doesn't like to be in civilization, so he's okay being, off planet for months and months, and he just kind of wants to live out the rest of his life in peace and not have to deal with society who looks at him as a monster for not even something that he did, but for what his species did, or what his race did. And then you got the little green Graxon Brigby, who he is, he's one of those guys that he's really bright. He's very smart. He's a great engineer. Always trying to think about how to make the next quick buck, and just a little bit of a troublemaker, and a little bit of comic relief. You gotta have that that staple. So, but he's a lot of fun to write. Especially when I have a cork board with all the characters pinned up, and when I'm writing it, I look at the pictures and I think, what would you do in this situation? What would you do? And he's a lot of fun to write for. The other ones are more fun to write because I can really dig into their bones and really humanize them and make people feel something for them, which I was able to do with Brigby too. But he's a lot of fun because you never know what he's going to do, and when I'm writing his character, it could go any way, and that's a lot of fun because it surprises me, and as a writer, if you're not surprising yourself, you're not surprising your readers. So it's fun to write for these guys because it does shock me sometimes when things happen.
That's one of the reasons why I prefer not to write on an outline, because I was writing my last book. It's this book narrated by God. And I just decided to start writing it after this book that I'd outlined thoroughly. And about 2/3 of the way through, something happens. And I was like, oh, that's a very interesting thing that happened. I did not think that this was how this script was going to go. Huh. Excellent. And then I just started writing that way. Does that happen to you as well? Do you go for an outline, or do you mostly go by the seat of your pants, or how does that work?
I do keep to an outline. I do the old, number of page. I have my synopsis for the chapter or the series, the issue, and then I line the paper down 1 through 24, and then I write a sentence for each one. But then, you move them around, and then as you start fleshing them out, you come to a page where something happens, and you're like, I didn't realize that was going to happen, but it clicks, it hits, and you're like, it's so obvious now, and then it does. I always say, like, when I'm writing it and I have my outline out, my outline could be like a puzzle piece, like where I have it planned from 1 to 24, but then I see, like, what, these pages, 15 through 20 should actually be 1 through 5. And then you start moving things around to make it flow better and to make it make sense, and you start feeling your beats, and you're like, okay, like that makes sense. Like, that's good. The issue 5 that we have coming out, that we're doing a Kickstarter for right now, that happened twice in there, where I had the plan of, this was the flow of it, and then as I'm reading it, I was like, this would make sense. This part in the middle would make sense as the very first part, and then the very first part would make sense right after that. And you start moving things around, and then you read it and you look at it and you start feeling the beat of it. And if that beat, I think as a writer, when you start to understand story structure and the beats, you just know, like, you can feel it. And as you're reading your own script, you can stop. Like, if your beats are off, it'll stop you in your place as you're reading it. It'll interrupt what I call, like, interrupt the illusion of the story, where you're like, wait a minute, like, something's off. Like, the beat didn't flow well enough. Like, I feel like I hit a brick wall as I'm doing it. And then you move things around, and then you read it, and you're like, that's it, that's perfect. And I say, like, I used to golf, and when you golf and you're standing up there and you're about to drive a ball, and you're shanking things left and right, but at the end of the day, when you hit that one perfect drive, you're like, that's it, and you just get that feeling like that was worth it. That was, and, like, I think, like, that's when you're moving things around and in your script, and you finally hit that. That's when you get that moment where you're like, that's it, that's perfect, and you know it. You know that that's exactly how it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I love that. I love that thought, because, a lot of people, when they're writing, they don't think of themselves as readers. But honestly, I want to be as entertained by my own story as anybody. And when something happens correctly, I'm just like, oh, well, that's the way this is supposed to happen now. And you're kind of saying that happens to you as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, definitely. It is. And again, I mean, it's you. If you have a sit there and if you have a plan for everything, and that plan just kind of falls onto the paper, like, I don't see how that would be fun for you, like, as a writer, because I think that as you're writing things, like, things need to change through the process, because, in your mind, you have a set idea for a story, but I think that you need to be surprising yourself, and I think the characters need to be telling the story. It's like, you put these characters in a spaceship and you give them a job, and now my job is just to follow them and tell their story, and they kind of lead the way, and that's how you get that good stuff out.
I love that, because I feel the same way when I'm writing. If you do it right, it's sort of like directing. I used to do a little bit of terrible directing in my day, and they say that it's 80% or more casting when you're directing. It's just making sure the people are in the right place, and then you guide them to tell the right story. And then editing is cutting the bad pieces out, so the story, this rough, great story, becomes this amazing final piece of it. And I've always thought of, when I'm writing, that that's sort of the same way as I'm guiding the characters to their eventual conclusion. But it's happening outside of me. I'm just writing it all down and documenting it.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
So let's talk a little bit about how you went from this conceptual writing the first issue to finding an artist and then actually getting it through and then getting people to read it.
Well, finding the artist was the most difficult part. I started writing this back in like 2003, 2004. I think MySpace was still the social media avenue that most people used, and I don't even think people used it, like how you use Facebook or how you and I use Facebook. I always say to my wife, like, you and I use Facebook a lot different. You go on there and you want to see what your friends are doing, and you check Facebook to keep up with friends that might live far away or family or whatever. We use Facebook as part of our network that we're in, of comic book writers, comic book artists, podcasters, people that do reviews. It's a totally different animal when you are in this indie comic creating network, and it's a monster. Like social media is just, it's so saturated that you really need to get a grasp on it. But back then, there really was nothing. I don't know if you know of Craigslist. I mean, I don't know if anybody even uses Craigslist anymore. But that's when I had the idea, and I'm like, okay, the way I want to do this is through a comic book. And I don't even know why. I think it was just like, you know what, I've always wanted to write a comic book. This sounds like it would be a good comic book, so that's what I'm going to do. And in my mind, I was like, I'm going to write a script. I'm going to write a synopsis. I'm going to send it to Dark Horse Comics. They're going to love it, and I'm going to be published through Dark Horse Comics. It's as simple as that, you start doing, like, realize, and then as you start, investigating the submissions and all that, you start talking to people, you realize, okay, I need to actually do this. Like, I need to put it together. I need the artwork put together. I need to do this independently, and then submit it that way. Still wrong, but that's, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to put this all together, and then I'm going to send it to Dark Horse Comics. And so again, I'm like, okay, I have to find an artist. So I went on Craigslist, and I found an artist, and he was good. We worked together for maybe 6 months, just conceptualizing the four main characters, and it was slow going. It was I might get something weeks after I asked for it, but and then his wife had twins, so he was like, I can't do this anymore. So then, of course, it's like, okay, well, I'm done. I'm not. I don't. It was so hard to find him. I don't see how I'm going to find an artist again. And I was in Park City, Utah for Sundance Film Festival, and a friend of mine, Wendy Lau, who was also there, she was asking me how my comic book was coming around. And I told her how I lost my artist. And she had just been to a high school reunion where she went to high school with George Acevedo, who's the artist that helped me bring all this out, and who did Volume 1. And she put us in contact together. And again, it was similar. It was slow. I think, when you see somebody who has an idea on script, I think George was kind of like, are you really into this? Is this something that we're really going to do? Am I going to waste my time with this? So we went back. I gave him all the conceptual art, and then he did his designs, and I loved them. And I was like, that's perfect. So we had the characters nailed down, and that was everything. I think that was what catapulted it into like the fast track, because seeing those characters posted up on my wall when I was writing, it just fueled me to be like, I need to tell their story, and I need to get them out there. Like, I want to introduce these characters to the world. And so we really started pushing for it. And then, and we started to kind of take a break. It wasn't, George got a job, and, it's, how it is. Before you really break into it, it seems like it's almost Mount Everest to get something in print. So we were doing it, and then we took a break, and I was watching. I'd see George on Facebook posting some art, and I kept saying, like, we need to get back into it. We need to get back into it. And then my wife was pregnant. So at that point, I was like, okay, I need to do issue 1, because obviously I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. I need to get issue 1 done before my daughter arrives, because then the comic book business is done with me, and I'm gonna I gotta focus on providing for the family and being a dad and all that. So I'm not gonna have time to do the comic book. So I told George, I'm like, I just want to do it. Like, let's just get it done. Let's do it. And we did. It wasn't colored. George did his own lettering, and it was in our hand. It was printed. It was in our hand, and it felt good. And then we found a small publisher, and we started getting, it started getting out there, and people liked it. People didn't love it, but people liked it. Issue 1 was my first comic book, and there was, when I look at it now, I can see all the flaws in it. And I think that goes the same with each issue. You see a lot of flaws in issue 1, a little less in issue 2, a little less in issue 3, but you're always going to see flaws because that's what makes us better. But
they always say that it's that great quote. It's the great thing about being an artist is you always look back at what you did whenever you do something and see that it's not as good as what you can do now.
Yeah.
So no matter what you do, you're always going to look back at it and think, oh my God, I can't believe that I did that, because you had finished doing it.
Yeah, and I think that's the same as a writer. Like when you write something, you're like, oh my God, I could have done that so much better if I. And then that's how we learn. I think the more you write, the more you learn, the better you get. If you are willing to be a student of the media. So anyway, we did that. We put out issue 1, and then my wife was very supportive, and she was like, okay, put out, and I was like, maybe I just want to get the volume 1 done. So 3 more issues. And when we did issue 2, more and more people started jumping on. And we did issue 3, more and more people, and issue 4. So now we are where we are right now, and we have a really big following. It feels great. I love hearing back from people how much they love the series, and it helps to show that to the wife, where she can see like, all right, this isn't something that nobody's reading, like this, it's not just a pipe dream. Like it is, like people do like it, and it helps to, keep her supportive of it. So we keep doing it. It was tough to find the artist, the whole process of it. It took years. I started talking to George, I think in 2006, and we didn't print issue 1 until November 2013. So it was a long process. And then after that, it happens faster. And once you learn how to do it, like right now, I could probably write a script and I could find an art team if you gave me 2 weeks, and it could happen. I mean, the script might not be written totally, but I could write a concept up enough to find artists that were, into that thing that would want to be a part of it. But back then, I mean, I didn't know where to begin. So, Facebook, and I think Facebook's my favorite. I think Facebook is the party, and it's you don't have to be there at the moment, but you can jump on 5-6 hours later, or even a day later, and you can kind of see what other people are doing because people are sharing it. Where Twitter is, I was just talking to a friend of mine, like with Twitter is more, I think that's more news driven. It's things that are happening right now, and that doesn't really translate. I don't think that it translates well for indie creators, because it's all chronological. And you post something. If I post something now, somebody that's jumping on 5 hours from now will never see what I posted.
Well, they say it's a 15-minute lifeline for Twitter.
Exactly. Yeah.
But what's nice about Twitter, in my opinion, and I literally just started using it to what I think is effective. Because people are actually retweeting and finding people from me, and this happened maybe in the last 2 weeks. I don't know what changed. Actually, I know exactly what changed. I started using Crowdster. But the difference is that for me, Twitter is about giving people news, but you can build your brand on there by showing people who you are and what you like. So that's what I like about Twitter. And even though you only have a 15-minute shelf life, every single person sees your tweet, unlike Facebook, where not everyone's going to see your Facebook post.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I need to. I think Instagram and Facebook I've got a grip on. Twitter is the one where I need to learn more about it and figure out how to use it. But it's like they say, like it's better to be good at 2 social media avenues rather than to be mediocre at 5.
I love that, because that's what most social media experts tell you. They say you need to have a Pinterest, you need to have a Tumblr, you need to have your Facebook and your Twitter. And when you start doing that, at the end of the day, you have 100 different media platforms, and everyone gets scared away, and they say, I can't be good at social media because I have to do all of this. But I think myself and you also, it sounds like, we both focused on Facebook and growing that Facebook activity and making Facebook a place that our friends and our fans and people that know us will come and talk about our posts, and we can comment on other people's posts. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like I said, I mean, it's almost like it's a party. It's a big party that's going on all day, and some people are going to show up later than others, but they're still going to get the story of what happened earlier the day, or people that left early are going to find out the next day, like, oh, after you left, this happened, and it's I don't know if I'm making any sense with that analogy, but that's what I've always felt like. Yeah, you go to bed and you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh wow, all this stuff happened.
14 people commented on this photo that I had yesterday, and 3 people sent me a message about it. But I think I really want to dive into this because it's something we haven't talked about, and it's so critical of how you grow your brand on social media. Because when people first start, everyone has the same Facebook page, right? They all have their friends and their friends from high school and college, and frankly, most of them could care that you're a writer or that
Yeah, exactly.
But how did you go from that Facebook page to how we both use it now, which is like, this is for business. I was at an event last night for my wife's work, and I was on my phone half the time, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm working." She's like, "You can't be working." I'm like, "Yes, having a direct message with an author who wants me to publish their book right now." And on Facebook, I'm having another message with a guy who wants me to put his strip on our wannabe press site. So I'm literally doing that right now, and she does not understand that at all.
Oh yeah, no, it's good luck with that. But that's what I was saying earlier. Like so many people use Facebook. Like your wife, she sees you on Facebook and she thinks you're talking to your friends. And I think that when we first started using Facebook, yeah, you had your friends on there, and then you post something about a comic book or something, and then one person sees that, and that's also a creator or somebody who's like, I want to do that too, and then next thing you know, it's maybe a one of your pages is being shared in a group that now you have a bunch of people coming to you and friend requesting you and liking your stuff and talking to you, and it's who you are. If you're a dick, then people are going to stop coming to you and talking to you. Where I feel like I always say that it took me so long to get to where I am that I want to help people. Like it's like, I don't know the exact words, but it's Kevin Spacey's got that one where, like, if you're fortunate enough to make it to the top, it's your responsibility to send the elevator back down.
Right, exactly.
But and then it was funny because I was just talking to Dirk Manning over instant message, and he's been a huge help with me, and just being there to like kind of give advice and pro tips. And I mentioned that to him. I was like, thanks for sending the elevator back down. He's like, there's no elevator in this business. You got to take the stairs, which is smart. It's true. Like you have to work for it. And in all honesty, like if I think like where I'm definitely not where I want to be yet. I want to be writing. I definitely would love to write for the Punisher for Marvel. Like that would be a trip. Like Punisher's a character that I've always wanted to write for. I think he's just such a complex character, and I would love to dive into that. So in my mind, I'm like, yes, I love doing independent stuff, and I love to do the creator-owned stuff. But I would, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't want to write for Marvel at some point. That's when I was a kid. That was my dream, was to write for Marvel. But I'm also not in the beginning stages where I don't really know what to do. So if somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, I got a script, what publisher should I submit it to? And then I kind of sit down and I'll tell them, I'll be like, look, your best bet is to find yourself an art team and, put it together and, start building a fan base. Have a following and start networking with people. Don't try to network with, DC artists and writers. Network with people that are right where you are right now, because you're going to enjoy. It's almost like that fraternity of you started off small with these people and you watched each other grow. Quinn McGowan, who is a creator of Wildfire, an awesome series of a black, basically a black Superman who fights monsters. Like he and I kind of, he was in the same boat I was in when we first came on, and I so enjoyed talking to him. I consider him a friend, and we root for each other. Like I want to see him succeed because we started together. There's so many people out there that you feel like you have a brotherhood with, and that's what I tell people. Like, try to look in these groups and find people that are where you are, and you'll help each other out, and you'll appreciate it so much more when you start getting to those different levels because you worked for it, and you'll feel proud of the work you put in.
And one of those people is going to be probably in Marvel or DC at some point, it's in your fraternity. So if you have all those people now, like have you talked to all the creators now, like for instance, when me and Charles were both doing comics, he was ahead of me, but we were both doing indie comics at the same time. And now he's working at Marvel, and, I'm moving my way to start my own publishing company. But that is something that we both started together. I want to move into Kickstarter right now, but this is a great segue because I think every time I do a Kickstarter, I always consider us the class of that year. So we just did a Kickstarter in September, and we were the class of September 2015. So that was like Walter Osley, who did Shiver Bureau, Melissa Albino, who did Lighter Than Air. All of those people sort of are that one class. And I'm in your class this year because we're launching a Kickstarter in a couple weeks. So
nice, yeah. Yeah, it is, and that's again like where you have that network. Like people, like somebody asked me, I did a podcast, and they're like, "What are you reading right now?" And I had mentioned Zombie Highway, Katrina Hates the Dead, because that's what I read. I read independent comics because and that's what I told them. Like, I'm an independent creator, and I know what it's like to have to fund these projects by yourself. So you have to come up with these rewards. You have to offer something that nobody else is offering to make people enticed to come to you. And you have to put out a kick-ass story, and you have to put something out where when somebody reads it, they're not like, I'm not really interested in going forward anymore with this. You want people to be like, I'll keep reading this until they're done. So I feel like, it's my duty to help other independents and to go out there and back Kickstarters. So, because I know what it's like to, do a Kickstarter, and you feel like, it's not going to get done unless we can get this funded. And I know there's so many people out there that I remember when I first started doing Kickstarters, and one of the questions I had as a podcast, it was, so why are you doing this as a Kickstarter? And I was just so taken back because I didn't know that some people look at Kickstarters in a bad light, where they're like, why can't you just why are you asking other people to help you create this? And my answer was like, well, I mean, if I did it myself, you probably wouldn't see anything for you'd probably see one book a year, one 24-page comic book a year, and at that point, people would just be the audience would fall off. You would, I think you as a creator would be like, I can't keep this up. It's if you're not bringing in the audience and you can't keep giving them something. You think about it, Marvel gives people something every week. I feel like I'm lucky if I can give something to somebody, like every quarter. If I can't give somebody to something new in 6 months or 8 months, like I feel like that you lose that audience. So that's one of the reasons why we also did Jasper Starlight Tavern, was to create this little webcomic that was in the Salvagers universe, where every week we could give somebody something related to that universe. But the Kickstarters is a great thing. Crowdfunding is a great thing when it comes to independent comics. And if you didn't have that, then you would still have the same recycled stuff. Wolverine dies, he comes back to life. You're not gonna get Katrina Hates the Dead. You're not gonna get Salvagers. You're not gonna get Zombie Highway. You're not gonna get these new stories that you otherwise you wouldn't even know they existed without Kickstarter, because you can't fund them on your own. It's too expensive.
and you can't build an audience without Kickstarter. Can you take us back? Well, I shouldn't say you can't build an audience, but Kickstarter certainly makes it a heck of a lot easier to build your audience. When was your first Kickstarter? What year?
I did issue one by myself, and that was out in print in November 2013. So I would say my first Kickstarter was early 2014 for issue 2. And I mean, at that point I was very new. So that was like, I think we did the Kickstarter, I set it for like $2,000 and we struggled to make that, like it was like, I definitely was kind of calling on friends and family to be like, hey, trying to do something here. And you can do that once. I always say, like, you can call on your friends and family to help you out there once, but after that, you really got to start making your fan base and building that fan base. And Kickstarter is a place that you can do that. I know a lot of people that use Kickstarter almost as their online shopping tool when it comes to comic books. And there's KickTrack, TRAQ.com, KickTrack.com, where you can put your Kickstarter in there, and people go there because you can see what's hot. You can go through and you can select comics, and you can see up to 25 on the hot list alone, and you can see what's going on out there in the indie comic world for crowdfunding, and it's a great tool. And I know people that became fans of Salvagers just from finding seeing my Kickstarter and finding the comic on there. So I think Kickstarter in itself is a social media tool.
Oh yeah, I know a bunch of people that spend hours at night. Like most people will flip through a Pinterest board, they'll flip through Kickstarter and see what's new and what's hot.
Yeah, and it's a great tool because, I mean, what's the difference of buying, backing something on Kickstarter or going to a store and buying, something there, Marvel or DC comic there, like you're paying for something. You're paying, if anything, if you're really a collector, you're getting something that nobody else is going to get unless they back this Kickstarter. And that's if you're doing the Kickstarter right. If the creator is doing the Kickstarter right, you're putting an executive producer's page in there, which I know a lot of people are like, is that really important? I think it is. When I have my comic book in my hand and I flip to that executive producer's page, I can see all the names of the people that took their time out of their day and their hard-earned money and said, like, I'm going to help back this story because I like it and I want to support it. So it's and then after that Kickstarter, like, you're not adding any more names to that.
Yeah, well, on top of that, we also did in a previous Kickstarter for Ichabod, we did like being drawn into the book. When we do the stretch rewards, we do bookmarks and sketch cards, and these are things that I print for the Kickstarter that you're not going to get if you don't do the Kickstarter.
Exactly. So that's important because, I've seen people like where they do something for the Kickstarter and they call it exclusive, and then next thing you know, like they're selling it online. It's like, that needs to be exclusive for the Kickstarter. That's what you're offering to people is like, this is the only place that you can get this. And they enjoy that. There's a lot of people out there that like that exclusivity and the limited rewards, so it's a daunting task for us, the creators, to come up with something new. And that's another thing. That's another reason why, as a creator, you go on to Kickstarters to see what other creators are doing. It's not cheating. It's not like you're copying off of them. It's getting good ideas from other people that have great ideas and saying, like, I'd love to do that. I'm actually working with Brian Tillman right now, who's a really talented artist, and he's going to do a few really cool marker prints of the 4 characters, and we're going to offer that as a stretch goal where if we hit another one, everybody gets that. It'll be in your package, and that's the fun stuff. Like that's the stuff like when you hit your mark and you could come up with the stuff, and when you're putting the stuff together and you're packaging it up and you're sending it out to somebody, it feels so good to put more stuff in. You bought a comic book for $13, But when you open this up, there's so much more in there that you got for $13 that nobody else is going to be able to get, And I've seen people, they come back and they have it hanging on their wall. They have a poster hanging on their wall, and it makes you feel good. Like you're like, this is something that, the story is enough, that the characters are enough, that people are digging into this, and they're not putting Spider-Man up on their wall. They're putting Brigby up on their wall.
Right, and so we just finished packing up our last one right before Christmas. I still can't believe we got it out by Christmas with all the delays that we had in printing. But I just kept putting stuff into these packages. I was like, wow, there's 10 or even more little pieces of like exclusive art that these people are getting that no one else is getting on top of the book. And it just kept going to bookmark and sketch card and collector card and exclusive print and all of these things that no other person is ever going to get. And I was like, that's actually a pretty good deal when you take all of these pieces together and see what you're getting. On top of that, you get to help birth a creative project into the world, which to me that's the most important part for Kickstarter. Is I'm helping birth something into the world, and even if my name's not in that credit list, you can't ever take away the fact that I helped this project get into the world, as opposed to go into a comic shop and buy Batman number 6,346,000,000. Like, you're not helping that project get birthed into the world in the way that you are on Kickstarter.
Exactly. No, it's so true. And, and that you feel that, like, when you're doing a Kickstarter and you see people sharing your Kickstarter links, people that are backing it, and you thank them, and they're like, you know what, like you're putting together something great, like, keep up the good work. Like, that's so important to us creators. So anybody that's listening, just know that, like any little, all the little things that you do, it's what really makes us continue to do what we do. To hear that from somebody that, they read your comic book and, how much they loved it and how much they appreciate it, that's what keeps us going. It validates what we're doing. Yeah. Because there's nobody else out there doing that. Todd McFarlane's not telling me how great my comic book is. It's the fans that are reading it, and those are the people that we do this for.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go, now that you're in the middle of a Kickstarter campaign, how do you go about, just quickly, like the nuts and bolts of keeping the project going and hot and interesting to your backers throughout the course? And not only the backers, but obviously getting new people also.
Well, one thing that I do like to do is in any of my Kickstarters, I like to offer a free comic download in the post. So, and it's for backers only. They've come out, they've put their money in there, so they deserve to have something. And it's what little we can give during the Kickstarter, and I'd like to give that out. So whether it's something from Jasper Starlight Tavern or Salvagers the Deliverance or a back issue, just to say like the project isn't funded yet, but here is something to look forward to, and show them like that this is just for you. I also like to do that when we get artwork coming in. The first place that I like to post it is in the post for the backers. Kind of like, you guys get to see this first, and then to keep the interest going, you post that up, you post it on Facebook. Chris right now is working on page 8, which nobody's seen page 8. I haven't even seen page 8, but hopefully when he's finished with page 8, I'll share that with the backers to be like, this is what this is what we're working on for you. We haven't stopped working. Like we're moving along. This is the progress. And then to go on the Facebook and to say they put that out there to get that circulating, and then and also to show people like, this is what you're going to get with your, for backing this project. This is the quality of art you're going to get. This is the quality of story you're going to get. And you hope that, you hope that it's enough that it stops somebody from scrolling down and they click the link and they come step into your virtual Comic-Con table for a little bit and find something to walk away with.
A virtual Comic-Con table. I love that. Do you do ads, like Facebook ads or anything like that?
I usually, when I post the link on my Salvagers page, I'll definitely boost that for for the month that it's going to be on. Hopefully bring in some new, some people that aren't a fan of the page yet or don't like the page. Hopefully bring in some new fans. Like they'll see that post. I think that's a good technique because when you post it, you hope that some people are going to share it, but you also want to hit some people that their interests might be comic book sci-fi, and you boost that to hopefully it lands on their feed at some point, and they're like, oh, what's this? And then you either get a new fan or you get a new backer, or you get somebody that might say to somebody else like, hey, I just saw this comic book on Facebook, and share it with another friend. But it's I don't have a problem with boosting the page and boosting a post. I get how Facebook works. You need to circulate it out there, and there's a lot of users out there, so you can't imagine that your post is going to reach everybody. So I do understand that, and it might not be a perfect world, but it's the one that we live in, and when you're on social media, you really need to do what you can to increase your fan base.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have no problem with Facebook ads. We run them all the time. We run them almost consistently. We do, we're doing our new Kickstarter prep for our book, and we're running Facebook ads to drive people to a free book giveaway for our book. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that because every other human being is doing it, and everyone from McDonald's and Coca-Cola down to Joe's Plumbing are running Facebook ads and trying to reach their audience. So why would the idea that there's something inherently wrong with running a Facebook ad is kind of crazy to me. I know it's a prevalent thing with people in the creative community because every single person does it. Every person does it, no matter what you're doing. It's just the thing. People have been marketing for 100, 200, 300, probably 10,000 years.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's a business.
Right. Thank you. And that is that is a great segue into talking, sort of wrapping up, because this is a business. And how do you go about from your first campaign, which, you're kind of hobbying into this thing, trying to get your second thing launched, trying to make sure people get it, trying to get your feet wet. But once that first Kickstarter hit and you deliver and everyone's going, okay, this is now an actual business. I got my book and I liked it. How do you transition from that first Kickstarter into building your business for the future?
I mean, it took me a long time to even figure out any of that. It's because I didn't really see it as a business. I didn't see it as a business until maybe a year ago, maybe even less than that. And I just kept seeing it as I'm writing a comic book, and that's all I wanted to do and just keep that going. But I mean, it is a business, and you have to conduct yourself as the CEO of that business. And some of the suggestions I give people when they're on social media, and I see some people that are starting their own thing and they get really opinionated about things with gun control or this or that, and I'm like, you need to be neutral on everything. Don't go if you're running a business, if you're sitting there and you're going to make a comic book, and you're going to be promoting this comic book, and you're the writer, creator, artist, you need to treat your whatever social media avenue that you take, you need to treat that like it's your office, and it's your business, and don't be a dick. Don't go out there and start alienating people with your opinions that when it comes down to it, nobody really needs to know anyway, because I'm not following you because I want to know, what your opinion is on gay marriage. I want you to make a comic book. So just keep doing that.
Right. I mean, unfortunately, when you have a Facebook page and you're trying to run it as an artist, creator, or business owner, your page can no longer be private, right? It's a public page. You have to make it public, and everybody gets to see all of the warts, and nobody wants to know Chick-fil-A's opinion on gay marriage. They want to get chicken nuggets.
Exactly. So just leave all that stuff out of it, and then and you won't have a problem. There's too many people already on Facebook that are putting all their opinions out there. So treat it like a business. How would you do it if you had a comic book shop? If you were sitting at a table at a Comic-Con, how would you conduct yourself behind that table? Is the same way you should conduct yourself on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, wherever you decide to do it.
And how did you, before we get out of here, how did your audience grow from the first to the second to your current Kickstarter project?
It grew fast. I started doing conventions. I started learning more of how to use social media. Started finding groups and posting my page on groups, and just again the network. Having that network of people that support each other and share pages, share art. Direct people to you, and just trying to conduct yourself in the most professional way possible. Where I think now, anybody who sends somebody my way for advice, they know that I'm not going to turn my back on them. I'm gonna help them out in any way that I can, and and hopefully with that word of mouth, people kind of. It doesn't hurt to get a fan of your comic because you are cool to somebody. It's like, hey, this guy Bob Salley is a really cool guy. He helped me out with this. Oh, and he's got a comic book. Oh, his comic book's pretty cool too. Maybe I'll be a fan of that. You get what you put in. Just like in anything in life, you put what you get what you put out. If you're a cool guy and you are helpful and you take the time for people, then you're going to get that positivity back, and that's what I try to do. With everything in life, is I just try to be as positive as possible and put out a good vibe, and hopefully that good vibe comes back. So, and it has. Again, being the writer, you're a writer, and how a lot of times you feel like. When people read the comic and they'll be like, yeah, it's great, and they're like, well, how was the writing? Did you like the writing? Because people are like, oh, the art was awesome, and like, but did you like the story? So I always hopefully people like the story. Hopefully people are liking the characters, because that's my part, and I hope that I'm doing a good job telling a good story and creating characters that people can relate to, that are three-dimensional, and that you want to learn more about.
I was at a seminar yesterday, and they were talking about how, Marvel was bought for $4 billion, and the company that Disney actually bought was called Marvel Characters Incorporated. They basically bought the characters because that is what the IP is. The IP is the characters and the three-dimensionality of them and the ability to market them and brand them and make them three-dimensional and make them things that people want to see.
Exactly.
So that's fantastic, Bob. Thank you so much for coming on. How about you tell everybody where they can find you, including the Kickstarter?
You can find us on Facebook. If you search Salvagers, you'll see our white and black logo for Harrier Salvage, the company that is the leader in salvage and rescue in the galaxy. We are on Twitter at _Salvagers and Instagram, Salvagers Series. We are running a Kickstarter right now, and we have a lot of awesome rewards. You can get digital reward packages for $5 to $10 where you get the whole series. We also have variant covers by Sajad Shah, who is an amazing, talented artist out of Florida, and we have the original art, cover art as well. We have one pop figure on there right now of our big guy, and tomorrow I will be putting on the second pop figure, and we do those as a limited run, and we have a lot of really cool artwork, and we are $200 away from being fully funded with 23 days to go. So you can just imagine how much stretch goals we're going to be trying to hit and how many extra stuff that we want to put into your package.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Bob. Guys, go and find his Kickstarter. He does a really awesome comic book, and we will see you next time. Have a great day. So that was Bob Salley with the Salvagers series. Remember, he's doing a Kickstarter right now, so please go to Kickstarter in the comic book section and look for the Salvagers. Additionally, make sure to find us at KickstarterUniversity.com, WannabePress.com, and on our own Kickstarter for My Father Didn't Kill Himself. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you, Kevin MacLeod, for our theme music. And again, thanks for listening. Have a great day.